Good evening, everyone. Gosh, I had to actually check what day it was. It is April 15th, 2021, and this is the weekly Police Accountability Board meeting. And we have some folks that'll be joining us in a few minutes and some more board members, but we're going to go ahead and move on with our agenda. So I think the first thing we have is the meetings to go ahead and vote to approve the minutes from our last meeting. So Connor, can you go ahead and please put those up? Okay. And after everyone in the group has read those, I'm going to look for a motion to approve the minutes, please.
Johnny, I move that the minutes be accepted as printed.
Second, please.
I can second it.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes from last week, April 1st? Okay. All right. And all right. So minutes are approved. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Harvey. All right. So minutes are approved from last week. And I'm going to go ahead and move on then to, so I really think we should have more folks here to vote on the operating rules. I think they are so important. So
I think that Bob is in the wrong Zoom meeting, so I'm just going to make sure that he gets here. But we can save the vote on the rules until closer to the end of the meeting because we've all had a chance to review them. We talked about them last time. We made the 3 revisions, so I don't think it's a problem to move on from that.
excellent.
But I just want to make sure that Bob can make the right meeting, so I'm going to re-invite him to this one.
Sure.
All right, Chair Wilson, what's next up on the agenda?
So really, we were going to discuss the budget and discuss the meeting that we had with the mayor and city council president and some of the folks at the city yesterday. We can start that conversation. I still would love to have some more board members present when we do discuss it, just because of just everything that did take place. So maybe we can start talking about, we can wait for more board members to show up, and then we can start talking about the budget and start talking about that process, please.
Well, Rabbi Settle just joined us, and I believe that Bob Harrison will be here in just a minute. So I'll just say, on last week, the board submitted its budget proposal to the city, to the administration, and to city council. We released that proposal to the public this past Wednesday. So that's just yesterday morning. So the budget proposal is an 85-page document, but we've released a 1-page guide. You can find both documents on our website, www.cityofrochester.gov/PAB/budget. We received news coverage about the budget on, I believe, Channel 8, Channel 10, Channel 13, Democrat and Chronicle, City Newspaper. So there's, we were on the front page of Democrat and Chronicle today. So there's a lot of knowledge out there that we have released a budget proposal. And there's a lot of knowledge about the top line budget figure of, the $5 million ask, that we're asking for at least $5 million. I think what is apparent from some of the initial social media reactions and the meeting that we had yesterday with the administration and leadership of City Council is that there's a lot of community education about what this proposal actually is, why we have to create and propose it, why it's at the numbers it is, and what the proposal will do for the community. It's very clear that there's a lot of education that needs to happen around that, and we can definitely dig into the details about that. But I want to say something very important, which is that the education matters. I think we've already seen from some engagements over the last 24 hours with members of the community who may not have fully understand, may come to the budget proposal with, this seems like so much money. Why does the PAB need all of this? Brief conversations that lay out the core parts of the proposal can get people to change their minds and understand that this is something that the community doesn't just need, but probably really wants, is a police accountability board that can do all of the things required of it by the city charter and that folks want to see in terms of systemic reform and individual officer accountability. So that's just kind of an overview of where we're at. Chair Wilson, I don't know if you want to move the discussion forward, or if we're still like to wait for Dr. Harrison. Or
Where's Dr. Harrison? Is
He
he
should
still
be-
stuck in Zoom land? All right, we'll find him.
we'll
All right.
find it.
So, okay. So, yeah, I think we can move on. I know that I would like to fold in some of the continuous discussion to still continue to drive the budget conversation. I will start with the meeting that we had yesterday with city government officials. And I mean, there's a lot I can say. I think, to kind of piggyback off of what Connor is saying, that there is a real, there's a generalized disagreement about where we should be heading with our money, and what the actual city really needs in order to have true police accountability, I believe. So I think, again, education is going to be important. I think that we're going to really have to drive that home with the public, and an educated community is an empowered community. And so that's one of the things that I'd really like to start discussing with you all. And just wondering too, I know that there are some city council members that have reached out asking questions about the budget. And so I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the, I anticipate that we are probably going to get a lot of pushback from city government officials on this budget. We already are. And just wondering about, and I think we can talk, kind of move into logistics about, why do we, addressing the question of, for the public and for city government officials, why do we need to have a budget of $5 million? Why can't we just roll that out over a period of years? Why do we, and even, kind of voicing what we've been seeing, from online, interestingly enough, also said to us yesterday in this meeting, is this really just an opportunity for the Police Accountability Board to, or the members of the Police Accountability Board to kind of, to show off, or to have this be about us, as rather than be about the public that we're serving, and that the community that we've been tasked to serve. And so, I think that these are, clarifying questions that we have to continue to drive with the community. And hopefully when they see how committed we are to the community, that we can start, that will prove to city government officials that we really are truly here to really impact policing in a huge way. So that's, I guess, where I'll start the conversation.
So I guess my thoughts on your last point, in respect to the conversation of if this is an opportunity for the Police Accountability Board to show off, or if we have the community's best interest at heart, I guess I just want to remind whomever that we're not getting salary for these positions. We're here doing this on a voluntary basis because we are here for the community. So I want to get that out there, that there's no financial gain for the board members from this budget. The other piece that I guess I want to say of note, the community did not ask for $1 million to be spent to WilmerHale, to the Race Commission, to do that initial work. They overwhelmingly voted for the Police Accountability Board to do that work. So that's already $1 million that was allocated that could have been better served doing, the work, could have been allocated to a cause that we're doing right now. In terms of, a lot of the information that we required to even build this budget, this is the cost of doing things right. We've seen the cost of doing things wrong, getting the same result time and time again. And for me, that's the definition of insanity, continuing to do the same thing over and over and getting the same result. If we want, we have to do things right, and that, unfortunately, doing the right thing comes with a price tag, especially when a lot of what we're getting from other organizations and from the reviews that we're doing and the research that we're doing also is, these different cities are also outlining their lessons learned. So, I mean, if we are able to have an adequate budget from day one, we and have those lessons learned, then we can try to avoid those at all costs. So we're not paying, more money on the back end. So those are my thoughts. I'm done speaking.
Rabbi Settle.
First, I want to say thank you to Dr. McIntosh for everything she said. Just perfect. And I want to add too that this isn't money for us. This is money for the community to have what they asked for. This isn't our money individually as PAB members. This is our money as the citizens of Rochester, and having our money allocated in a way that the community asked for. There's so many parts of this budget, of the way our city budget works, that the community has no say in at all. And here's a piece that the community actually made its concerns, its interests, and its desires known. And to me, at least, that's a really important piece of this. And in terms of how I want people to understand that when we, as I said, none of us feel like we're asking for this money for us, right? We're asking this money to get this work done that an overwhelming majority of this community has demanded. And I think the other thing too, that I think is at least some of the things that I've heard that people are confused about, is because there's been this whole discussion about discipline and whether or not we have discipline and all that stuff. I think people think of our only job as investigating complaints and making some decision about them. And the issue for me, at least, about that is sort of the Band-Aid on the injury. In other words, once harm happens already, there's only so much we can do to repair it. But the whole rest of what we've been given in the legislation and the city charter to look at policies, procedures, and practices is what it's going to take to make the injury not happen in the first place. And that's why it's so important that not only we do it, but that work also be done properly and have the funding it needs to be done properly. So that's what I want to say.
Board Member Perez.
Yes, I agree with everything that's been said up to this point. This is the part that I don't understand and that creates confusion for me. We talk about $5 million, right? But we don't talk about how much money has been paid already to people that have sued the city, right? And have had to been compensated for an error that could have been avoided if we were able to do what we need to do, right? So that part I just don't understand. We're quick to throw money at other things, but we're not that quick, to invest where it needs to really happen. When I think about being able to look at complaints, and try to resolve them within what is it, 90 days? How can you possibly do that without having the resources that you need? When Connor talked about the type of staffing that is needed in order to move this in the way that it's supposed to be moved, and to look at cases in the time frame that's been given to us, it's almost impossible to be able to do that in that time frame with very, very little money. I rather we have the money and not use it than to continue to develop and then not have it at all. Because once we get this going, and my not so much concern, but I know that this is going to happen once people know where they can go and file a complaint and know that something's going to happen once they do that, we're going to hear more and more and more complaints. So how are we going to be able to manage all of that if we don't have the staffing, because a lot of this money is for staffing, how are we going to be able to do that if we don't have the money?
Right.
We also have to remind folks, like Dr. Celia said, we're all volunteers. We squeeze all of this between everything else that we're doing. And if you were to ask any of us how busy our day is, we're all going to tell you extremely busy. So how can we move this forward if we don't have the resources that we need to move it forward?
Right.
And if we're able to do this right, we're going to avoid a lot of the suing and a lot of the mistakes that are taking place within the department and the city being sued for things that have happened. So
yeah,
that's just confusing to me. Like, again, and you could throw money everywhere else, but you can't, you're questioning this. It just doesn't make sense.
Dr. Harvey, did you have something you wanted to say? I saw your hand was up.
Well, I did have my hand up, but between Dr. McIntosh actually knocking it out the ballpark with explaining and the words that she said, and Rabbi Settle endorsing it as she did, and then Board Member Perez, it's really nothing more to say other than 75% of our city has said that there's a need for this board, and they did not put this board here to not be able to service this community in a way that would really cause lives to be saved, people to be safe, people to feel good in the community, people to not be afraid, especially people of color. And I say this even for myself, to drive in the streets of Rochester and the police get behind me in my vehicle and I have to turn another street because I start thinking that it could be my life, or it could be something, and the fear that we have, for what goes on in Rochester and for what we're seeing in other communities. So we are put here to serve this community, and I think our community wants us to be able to serve them for safety and security in this city. So I say thank you to our board members for saying it so well.
Reverend Nikoloff.
Right now, the system we have in this city is not only failing the citizens, it's failing our police officers. We are widely considered by so many places to be one of the models of how not to do policing in this country. And that's not only an insult to the people who are harmed by this, it's an insult to the people who put their lives on the line every day to try to provide compassionate and effective law enforcement. So something's not working here. We already have one of the most segregated and failing school systems in the country, and now we have one of the most segregated and failing police departments. Not because of bad teachers, not because of bad police officers, because of a system that's not working. I think this is an opportunity for us to invest some money into saying we want to turn it around. We want to show it can happen when we invest resources not into another scheme or into another pie in the sky, like swing for the fences, Hail Mary pass, but to say we have research backed, research proven methods for going forward. We've looked at other PABs, we've looked at other cities, we've looked at everything. Our executive director has done an incredible job on our behalf, on behalf of this board, of researching those things and to interview and to make sure that what we're doing is effective. And so I think why wouldn't we want to not only do what's best for these citizens, but also to show what it looks like to turn around a city that's at the bottom and to start to become not just a model, but also to just show what a redemption story looks like, or a reparation story looks like. We can do a lot better here. I see so many people driving around town with bumper stickers that say Rochester is the best. Look how many festivals we have. Look how much music we have. Look at this culture. We have a bridge named after Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony, and it's great to put those names on our bridges, but it would be way greater to take what these leaders of the past have taught us and to actually apply it into some real reform. And we have a tremendous opportunity because of the tremendous lack that we have to enact a great reform and a great turnaround, because of how far down we are. And this money will be spent not to enrich people on this board who make nothing, but to enrich this community, and also I think to enrich both those who are policed and those who police. So I don't see why we wouldn't want to be known for that. Why we wouldn't want to be known for the people who saw that we had an issue and then did everything in our power to correct it, to see that there's nothing we won't do in order to ensure the safety of our citizens, the safety of our officers, the safety of everyone involved, and to work for the thriving of all involved. I think spending this money will not only allow us to pursue complaints, but to create something positive and constructive that will enrich the lives of all of our citizens.
So Dr. Harrison, I'm just catching you up. We're talking about the budget, and we're also talking about the meeting that we had yesterday, Connor and I, with city government officials, the mayor, and President Scott, and some of the budget folks.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Dr. McIntosh.
I guess I'm just kind of thinking about the overtime for police officers recently. And I believe that was like 2.5 million.
Yeah, over 2.5 million just for overtime for policing related protests.
Right, protests for misconduct. So, I mean, so this very community, when they speak out, they still end up, it just seems like in a sense, there's a cost at every turn, and demanding justice, wanting to speak out and protest about justice also causes a price tag of over $2.5 million. But to address the, and kind of in a sense, addressing the very issues that we're trying to work on, so I guess I'm just really concerned about that. I'm concerned about, all this money that's being spent in other ways, and the resources not being, allocated, or it being questioned as to if the PAB is doing the right thing for the community. I'm just very concerned about that. So I'll pause there because I have to think through this process, but I'm just very concerned about that. I'm just hoping that the PAB was not kind of put here for window dressing. We're here to do the work. We want to get the work done. And like I said, the work comes with a price tag. And as Reverend Nikoloff just talked about, we know that, we've seen the product of unresourced, systems, mental health system under-resourced, the RCSD under-resourced, and we continue to see the product of that every day. So I'll turn it over to anyone who else wants to speak.
I just wanted to, before Dr. Harrison speaks, I did want to say that, we talk about the PAB, concerns about the PAB being window dressing, or, even to just be quite frank, some part of somebody's political chip or maneuvering apparatus. One of the things I think that, I was told yesterday when we talk about, the national model, even though what we took from different cities, best practices from different cities, knowing that a lot of these police accountability boards, citizens review boards have existed for decades, and they told us what worked and what didn't work. We took their best practices and put them into our budget, implemented them to make sure that we are, like we said, now we're in the, we're saying like, if we had done it, this is how we would have done it. This is what we were told. And that would have, again, the product is that we would be the national model of policing, but that I think is being misconstrued by others as being self-reaching, or even told, like I was told by the mayor yesterday, that she's not looking to build the national model, which I want to give it context too, because, I think that, when we talk about a community versus national model, being worried about your community, making sure that your community is getting the best of what it is and not really worried about what the nation thinks. I understand that, but I also understand that I don't want to have roadblocks put in the way when we are trying to really do the best we can to serve the community. And that's really, I guess I'm just voicing your concern as well. Dr. Harrison.
Before Bob goes, can I just add a thing to your point? Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it's also not about the national model. It's about creating the right model. What's going to work for this community?
Dr. Harrison?
I just wanted to offer another perspective, maybe, because we were all at that, not all, we were all, but Shauna, you and Connor and I were at the Alliance meeting the other night that basically was a meeting with a guy from Seattle. I forget his name now, but someone with a lot of experience in working under the federal monitoring system. And what I remember is he kept repeating that how expensive monitors were and that they cost the city $1.5 million a year. And I thought, oh shit, he just made a real interesting argument, because if I were looking at it from a monetary standpoint, I would just go ahead and go through the process of the federal litigation. That's going to be 3 or 4 years and no more than $1 million or so a year in lawyers' fees. And then at the end of that time, I'm under a federal monitor costing another $1.5 million. I'm still coming out ahead. Just saying.
Dr. Rabbi Settle.
I had actually thought before I say the other thing, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is actually it's way more than $1.5 million a year, right? That federal monitoring could.
Doesn't it depend on the city, I think? Because I know Oakland spent, but we only know that Oakland spent, I think, 28 million, but that was
million across about 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
And there's when you're calculating the cost of the federal monitor, it's how much are you paying the lawyers who are the monitor?
Right.
How much are you paying to respond? How much are you paying for the court costs? So it's hard to come up with a specific figure. It can be bigger or lower than $1.5 million a year.
Right.
But I think that what is misunderstood, and I admit I misunderstood it at first, is it's not that the federal government pays for that, the city pays for it.
Okay.
And that's the important piece. And the thing I want to say about national model, the reason we would be a national model is not because we're spending money, it's because we're doing it right. And that's the point. When we talk about being a national model, it's not for fame and acclaim. It's for the idea that we've done it well and we've taken the best, and who wouldn't want to be the best? You know, what we're saying by saying that is we want to be the best. Like people, I think Reverend Nicola, whoever was saying about how people take pride in Rochester, here's something we should be able to take pride in.
I don't know.
I just want to interject. As one Facebook commenter pointed out, it's the $1.5 million, maybe a national average figure for the annual cost.
One other thing I want to express a frustration I have too, is that I find that many of our local politicians mention in one way or another their involvement in creating the Police Accountability Board. And I feel that if you're going to take credit for that, then I want you to publicly support what we need to do our job properly and not create obstacles.
Matthew, nope. Okay. Anyone else wanted to weigh in on that? Nope.
No, I think those were all great points.
Okay. So I guess last thing I'll say, and because at this meeting that we had yesterday, I did say that I would say it. I want to say, when one of the last statements that was made to me, it was a 2-hour meeting. One of the last statements that was made to me was by the mayor, and I just wanted to make sure because I wrote it down. She said to the board, She said, I implore you to take a step back from your executive director, go into executive session and decide what the board really wants to do. Talking about our budget and our kind of the steps that we're going to take going forward. And, folks, I made it very clear.
Johnny, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure, I will repeat that. Yep. She said to me, I implore you to take a step back. Chair Wilson, I implore you to take a step back from your executive director, go into executive session and decide what the board really wants to do.
What did she mean by that?
Well, I think that she wants us to take a step back from our executive director. That's what that means to me. And here's what I said in response to just clarify. I said, we've taken a look at the budget. We are excited about the budget. We have given our okay on this budget. We've worked alongside Connor. We're very excited, and we've made the best hiring decision that we have, and that Connor is our choice. They're very proud of Connor, and that's it. For him to be left out of executive session, I don't agree that should happen. And I guess I just want to say this publicly as well. Folks, like this person that you see here Connor has worked very hard to make this budget happen. And he's done it with our assistance, with our feedback, many long hours. Remember, he's the only one that is a full-time paid employee that is working and has worked like this for months. It is exhausting. And so as you can see, there are many hands, but I guess I'll just let the board respond to that. I didn't see who was first. So, Ida, go ahead.
I was probably last, but that's okay. So okay, I'm confused again. Because for months, we were being told that we could not move forward or do anything without our executive director.
Yep, that's true.
So now we're being told to back off, do executive sessions without him, and make decisions without him. I gotta go back to that Puerto Rican phrase that I shared with you once. O se peinan o se hacen jolo. Either you comb your hair or you roll your hair, but you can't do both. They need to decide what it is that they want us to do. They put us here, they selected us, let us do our job. Yes, they're not gonna like everything that we have to say. They're not gonna like everything that we propose, and that's okay. But to advise us, would she like for people to say, move away from the mayor and go make your own decisions? Would she like that? I don't think she would. So I don't appreciate that advice. I really don't. I don't appreciate her saying that. I don't appreciate her saying that we're trying to be show-offs. Show-offs of what? This is hard work. Like, do you really think we want to wake up every morning and have to worry about what happened in the city? And do we have to make a statement? Do we have to do a press conference? Do we have to meet 10,000 times during the day to figure things out? Do people really think that that's fun? That we want to show off on that? This is hard work. They can't tell us one day to do one thing and then the next, follow the procedure. Well, we don't know what the procedure is. They give us instructions with no direction. Like, what are they doing? Like, this is insane. You can argue about the budget, fine. If you don't like the dollar sign, that's okay. But don't tell us to separate ourselves from our executive director. For the first 7-8 months, all you kept saying we couldn't do anything because we didn't have an executive director. Like, that really, really, really makes me really upset. And I have to agree with Rabbi Startle that, this whole thing of putting PA, I have a letter. No, I think I threw it out. A letter, all the politicians about how they've supported the PAB. This is not a way of supporting it, and this is not good advice. I'm sorry. And remember, we've had bad advice since the beginning. Since the beginning, legal advice and any other kind of advice wasn't good advice. Thank God that we were smart enough to go on our own, intuition and not jump and do some of the decisions that they wanted us to do from the very beginning. So they have to make up their mind. Either they're going to let us do this or they're not. Because this is crazy. Saying stuff like that really makes me upset. Really, really makes me upset.
So may I?
Go ahead, Rip.
I-
Go ahead, Rip.
Again, I don't like to be redundant. So thank you, Board Member Perez. I would only say to that extent, I would be fine with the budget being really discussed and sent back to the board to rework your budget. I submit a budget each year in the role that I work in, and I can be honest with you, I don't remember in the last few years if I got everything that I asked for, if I didn't get some pushback.
Sure.
So I would be perfectly fine with pushback, but to suggest what I frame as nothing other than division, to say that we push back from our leader, I certainly wouldn't want. I'm going to have to pull off anyway to go to my board for a meeting tonight, and I certainly wouldn't want anybody to say to my board, pull away from Pastor Harvey. You all make decisions without the pastor. And I'm a friend of the mayor's, and if she's looking, I want everybody to know I'm a friend of the mayor. But I wouldn't want anybody to say to the council to push away from the mayor and you all run and operate in a fashion and make decisions without her. So that's my pushback, is to say that's, as you say, Board Member Perez, that's not good advice. That's not good counsel. And we reject that. And I'm speaking for all of us. We reject that in the same spirit in which it was given.
Ooh. And I just want to make a clarifying statement that, Connor serves at the will of us, period. He serves at our will. And,
I want to say that we are very happy with him serving at this will.
That's
and
right.
That he does a great job, and that there could not have been a better person to serve this position than Connor. I said as a board member, and I said as a citizen of Rochester, and I said as a leader of Rochester and the pastor of Mount Olivet Baptist Church, there couldn't be a better person to serve this position than Connor. And you can pay me later, Connor.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Harvey. And the endorsement of the pastor of Mount Olivet Baptist Church.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Absolutely, Connor. Yeah.
Matthew, I think you're up. Rabbi Settle, were you going to say something?
Oh, actually, Dr. McIntosh was before me, so I'm happy to.
I'm sorry about that, Dr. McIntosh.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, I guess, thank you. I guess a couple things. What I picked up from this conversation was, or from that, what you wrote down, was that it was implied that we weren't a part of the decision making. That's what it sounds like.
That's correct, and I wanted to point that out. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and I would say that that's not the case. And I don't know if when this budget was discussed, I mean, for me, I would say, if there's some disagreement with the budget, have we been able to sit down, do a presentation to them, explain to them why the budget is the way it is, instead of them just looking at the document? Because I think when you are able to hear the reasons why the budget was designed like that, or all the things and the resources that go into it, whether it's staff, whether it's essentially has to run like a mini court for all the things that we have to do, I think it really puts things in context. So I think if we are, if people are, not people, I guess, there's one thing to disagree, but I would say, what's your solution? You know, if it's specifically that you don't like the budget, how can we get to a happy medium, I guess? But if they're just looking at numbers on a paper and not really getting the context behind why it's set up like that, then I think that should really be the natural next step to say, okay, let's meet with the PAB and let's go over this budget so we can get a better idea of why it looks like that. But that would be, you know, pushing back. I would definitely say that those comments imply, from where I'm sitting, it sounds like it implies that we're not a part of the process. We don't have any input. Connor is making decisions on his own, which I would say is not accurate. So I would reject that no as well, similar to Reverend Harvey. But I would just say, to get to the next step in terms of solution, you know, we would invite them to come to a meeting and get the context for the budget, if that's the issue, and to be able to give us some strategies or solutions to it and see where we can have a compromise if that's the case. I'm done speaking.
Dr. Harrison, I saw that you left. Are you back? Okay. Board Member Perez, did you have something else you wanted to say? No. I see.
I think it's my turn.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was pointing at Dora,
Oh,
sorry.
well, I'm sorry. So you're pointing at Bob on my screen?
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Rabbi Settle.
Okay, it's not a biggie. I, with all due respect to Reverend Harvey and to Connor, our leaders are Chair Wilson and Vice Chair McIntosh, okay? And I am really insulted on behalf of our leadership with the implication that they don't know what they're doing or are somehow being duped, or that all of us are being duped by Connor, right? And I just want to say that, and I want to say that as he himself repeatedly says, he works for us. We don't work for him, and he does, you know. And I want to make clear publicly that when we disagree with anything with him, we tell him, and we he is not manipulating us. As we let it be known. And I'm actually incredibly proud and happy of the very mutually respectful and connected relationship we all have working together. So, and the solidarity of this board in that way is incredible, especially given that some of us have never even met in person. So I just want to, you know, put that out there. And this isn't the only time. I mean, I've heard other comments, and not, you know, from other quarters, shall we say, that somehow we're being manipulated. And I find that so profoundly insulting to our capabilities and intelligence. And I just want that to be clear.
Dr. Harrison?
Well, maybe I'm cynical, but this is the way bureaucracy works. This is the way politicians work. It's to the politicians' advantage to say that they voted to establish the PAB. It's to the politicians' disadvantage for the PAB to actually be functional.
Correct.
Because that causes all kinds of problems. That causes all kinds of jeopardy. If you're a politician, you'd like to have it both ways. Probably similar to religious leadership, but don't go that way. Now the thing that's really amazing about our situation is that we struck oil. We out of all of the people that applied for to be executive director of this board, there was one person that to me stood out. Was the candidate of choice pretty much from the very beginning. And how we could be so lucky to have someone whose hair is on fire like this is can't be anticipated. and certainly the bureaucrats couldn't anticipate it. So they're looking at this whole situation and saying that we're doing more than we're supposed to do. We've produced more than we're supposed to produce already, and we haven't done nothing really. I know, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean that, but you know, we haven't tried a police officer. We haven't really produced a conclusion about any of the things that we're looking at. But where we've gone is already far beyond what anyone in a political situation would actually be comfortable with, because they're mostly comfortable with people who don't do anything. And that's not this group.
Correct.
That's all.
Yeah. Reverend Nikoloff.
Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing. We're following the bouncing ball, and we should stop doing that. What I mean by that is what they said is irrelevant. Let's keep doing our job and stop fussing and fuming about what they said and what they all this sort of business. I mean, they're stop worrying about that and let's just stick to our task. I'm sorry.
That's a great point. I think so. The last Dr. McIntosh and Reverend Nikoloff will have the last words on that. And so I really oscillated back and forth about bringing this up in the meeting tonight, but I did it for two reasons. Is because, we've worked really hard to make this board functional. It may not be functioning at 100%, but, even at 60% or 70%, we're doing a good job, I believe. People may not think so, but I do, considering where we came from. And the second reason is because I told the mayor that I would. And I did tell her that I would tell the board what she asked me to tell the board. So I'm going to go ahead. I think, Reverend, you were first, and then Dr. McIntosh will finish out this discussion on this. And then we can move on to the budget discussion.
During our executive director's interrogation by City Council, someone said that when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And Connor showed us who he is, and I believe him. He's worked his butt off. He's done research. Everything he suggested on our behalf has been backed by extensive research, has been proven to work, or at least has as good a basis as anything. On the other side, we have city leadership who continues to say, we want to start the same, but we don't really want to see it actually work. We just want a bauble or a mark on our resume to make us look good in the next election. So I asked the people of Rochester, what do you want? Do you want people who are doing work on your behalf, or people who are asking you to work on their behalf? Do you want someone who is in a board who is actually trying to make our city a more thriving place, or do you want a city that continues to help politicians thrive on their behalf? We have too much evidence of what's happened in the last 8-10 years of when politicians make promises in order to enrich themselves. And you have a year of evidence where people on your behalf who you voted to establish and then have been appointed by your elected representatives are working on your behalf. It's insulting, as everyone has said, to imply that Shawnee and Celia and our leadership are somehow being manipulated by Connor. It's insulting to all of us. And I just ask you again, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. On the other hand, you have a chance to do something extraordinary. And it is an election year, and you have a chance to really press the politicians who claim to represent you on what they really think. It doesn't mean they have to 100% accept the $5 million price tag, although, again, it's not an illegitimate starting point. It's actually a very legitimate starting point. Nobody questions RPD when they say, let's buy another tactical vehicle for use in protests, or let's invest money in more, secondhand arms from the U.S. military. No one raises a question about that. But when it's time to invest in schools or to invest in police accountability, suddenly there's all sorts of uproar. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Our community is showing that it doesn't really care about actual things. It just cares about rhetoric. So this is a chance for our community to take a moral stand and to say, we care about a healthy and thriving community. Right now, our executive director, on behalf of someone who consistently redirects public outrage away from themselves, is once again doing that as a way to avoid having to say what they think about this budget. Our public leadership would rather blame than take responsibility for where they stand. From the beginning, they have done that to our executive director, and because they've done that to him, they've done that to this board. And because they've done that to this board, they're doing that to the people of Rochester who voted for this board to be established. They're doing it to Shawnee, they're doing it to Dr. McIntosh, they're doing it to you. Many years ago, a homeless settlement under the Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony Bridge was bulldozed. And right now, your will is being bulldozed in the same way. And they think they can get away with it. We're not asking for money with impunity. We're asking for a public conversation that is done in public based on research, based on figures, based on facts, based on the will of the people. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. We are being public with you. Our executive director has been nothing but public, has published an 80-plus page report showing research-backed recommendations for what needs to happen so that the worst police department in the country can be reformed to be one of the best police departments in the country. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. He's showing you who he is. We're showing you who we are. Research-based, community-minded, looking for results. Other people want flashy rhetoric while they bulldoze your dreams in the name of other people's profit. There's an election coming up, and if you can't make this happen in this decision, then make it happen in that election. If your elected officials refuse to take a stand on this issue, then you should not vote for them. You need to take a stand because they are undermining your will, and they're trying to make it sound like someone else's fault. When someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend. Dr. McIntosh, last word.
Yeah, I guess just thinking about that, I really appreciated that, Reverend Nikoloff. And I guess I have a saying that, anytime you're challenging the status quo, you're going to kind of get resistance. And I think the work that we're doing is disruptive. We're essentially disruptive innovators, trying to make this, the work that we're doing, a reality for the community. But I guess my one concern would be, I heard someone bring up the word division earlier. And I'm wondering if that's a strategic thing in a sense. First it was the memo, then now the budget. And I'm just wondering if these are, because I think we're, like I said, we're willing to have these conversations about how we can, or why, give the context about the budget. But I'm wondering at some point if it's seen as we're disruptive towards, because of the budget or the memo, or, are in disagreement, is that going to be cause to say the PAB is not working and therefore we need to try other options? So I guess that's, I'm just looking at that and saying, what's the impetus behind a lot of this? Is it just about the budget? Because if it is, let's talk about it. Let's give you the context. Let's come to a compromise. But, like you said, when you turn on the news, we've talked to individuals that say, when they think about Rochester, they'll literally ask, did anybody get killed in Rochester tonight or last night? And that should not be how Rochester is seen. I personally believe that Rochester has the ability to have a better community. And I think a lot of people do want that. But a part of that is going to be changing this part and doing this work. But that concerns me because I'm just wondering, when things keep happening like this, the memo, the budget, or the concerns around these things, is that a strategy to say, the PAB is not in alignment and it's not working, and therefore this wasn't a good idea? So I'm just wondering. So I just like to hear other people's thoughts.
Well, so I agree. I mean, I guess I'll say the last word. I agree about the divisive strategy. I think that it takes away from the ability for citizens to demand community to demand accountability of their city government, which, other people have heard me say this, but, government is made of community. Communities get together to decide how they would like to see and hear and how to see themselves, like what law should look like and how to keep each other safe. And so, but when you take that out of the hands of the community, then this is what you have. And, we talked about religion earlier, and, like religious history talks about there's always like a hierarchy, right? And, and there's this other part in the law is the law as well. Like only a few people can understand the law. Only the few people can have access to God and access to God's power. Only a few people can understand, historically. I see your face, Rabbi Settle. Only only a few history. Only a few people can have, access while the rest of us are just left up to interpretation, right? But really, the community is everybody is at the table, not just a few. And it's really, the PAB pulls out chairs for everyone, so everybody can sit down. And so that's really why we're here. I'm sure I'll get a letter from some city government officials tomorrow, but publicly, we've discussed your concerns, and we don't share them. And we will continue to go forward, and we will continue to, make things as transparent as possible. And we are also proud of our, executive director, and we are proud of our board. And, I guess the last thing is I'll say it's let's get to work. Let's get to the budget.
I'm happy to start the conversation about that getting to work part, because
Great.
there's a lot that needs to get done. The city is going to be proposing its budget probably sometime in late May. I'm not sure on the exact dates. And then city council will get a chance to vote on the final budget sometime probably in June. Again, I'm not sure of the exact dates. Again, city council is the ultimate arbiter here. In many years, they just approve the budget. In some years, they revise it. And so, the real reason for the PAB to propose the budget is because the city charter says that the proposed budget, the one that comes out of the city, has to provide all the resources to, do investigations in 90 days, to fill all of our requirements. And so, it's in some sense up to the city, the administration on the first part, to kind of propose the budget that follows the rules. But here's the thing. I think, yesterday's meeting, it was a 2-hour meeting. We did talk a lot about the details in the budget. I think that what we know are some areas of concern that we need to address up front. Because remember, on Tuesday, we are meeting with City Council as a whole. That is our quarterly meeting with City Council. It's on the 20th. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of concerns that were said on Wednesday that will come up again on Tuesday. And I think we should just talk through a few of them. Again, I think the big one is the PAB does not need resources to do policy and procedure review. To investigate the police department, you do not need real resources. You can either use a contractor, go to RAT maybe, or you can just kind of know it when you see it. You see the video from Harris Street, that you need to have a policy banning pepper spray or something. So, first there's the idea that policy and procedure review is not really important to our work. It's not a central part of the PAB's work to kind of do systemic review and investigations and policy. Or if it is a part of our work, it doesn't take much in the way of resources. So that's one big, I'd say, misconception that we have to get around. Another one, and I think this is important for the board to address, is the idea that the board will not investigate complaints until we have disciplinary power. Now, I think something that we all know is that the community wants an investigatory process with disciplinary power at the end. And we also know from looking at other cities, if you don't offer disciplinary power at the end, if that's not an option, if it's just a recommendation, you're going to get fewer complaints and less satisfaction because people want the consequences. Now, something that people, I think there's a lot of confusion about, even probably within city government. The current system is just review. The Civilian Review Board just reviews police investigations. Even without our disciplinary power, we have to investigate from soup to nuts, from the moment you hear about an incident all the way to gathering all the evidence, interviewing the witnesses, just like a criminal investigation. You have to do all that. That is what we are tasked with doing. And there's no lawsuit that should be affecting that, right? Now that we know, that's what we can do. So, I think that something that city officials really harped on was, there seems to be uncertainty about, if we actually gave you this money, would you actually investigate complaints? Even if you didn't have disciplinary power, would you do it? And I think the board needs to have a very clear statement of, if we got this money, we would investigate complaints. Or if the board doesn't, no, we wouldn't. We wouldn't bother opening up. We would wait until discipline was back. And so that's something very important, I think, for the board to have a firm stance on, clear thinking. I think we've talked a lot about this, but I think having a very clear, unified statement on that's very important. And then I think there's there's some really kind of smaller things, someone going into a position saying, I don't think this position should be paid as much as it should, that kind of thing. But the real core of it is that I don't think that people understand what it takes to properly investigate a complaint. I think there's just no real understanding of that it is extremely time and resource intensive. And you can either do it, and we talked about this before, you can do it cheap and thorough, cheap and quickly, but you can't do it cheap, quickly, and thoroughly. And really, police officers, just as much as anyone, deserve fair and quick and thorough investigations. And you can't do that without resources. You really can't do it in the context of our model without lawyers. You wouldn't ask a non-lawyer to investigate and prosecute a case against a police officer in criminal court. And you wouldn't probably ask someone to do it in the context of ours. Remember, we're trying to be as rigorous and fair as possible. Police officers deserve it, and the community deserves it. And so it's very important. It's very clear that a lot of city officials don't understand, because we never had that before. We've never had this before. So there's a lot, you can see why people would be confused, but the idea that you can start small is just not, it's not realistic. What you are saying is start either really slowly or start not thoroughly. I think it's very important that we kind of communicate what it takes on that level. And we got into the data during the 2-hour meeting. I'm not sure there was full understanding of the data. I think there was some real confusion about what complaints are, this kind of thing. But my point is this: is that there are some areas that we need to have clear answers on and some clarification for people like City Council on Tuesday and the public moving forward. But I think what Wednesday's meeting probably showed is that it's going to take the community standing up and saying we want this, rather than private presentations to city officials getting the budget passed. Because I think there's some cap to the persuasion. I think some people just might have their idea of what they want the PAB to do, and that's it. So I think we have to be clear-eyed that the primary mission here needs to be educating the public about what we need and why it's important. And so I can talk about some plans to do that, but I wanted to pause and get people's feedback.
Dr. Harrison?
Well, my view of budgets is that every budget gets criticized. That's the nature of the game, and the criticisms are always unfair because when you put the budget together, you put it together with your issues in mind, and someone else is seeing it from a different viewpoint. And I think you need to step back for a minute and assume that the other side wants clarity as much as you do. I know that's a hard assumption to make, but it's a one that I think helps things. Oh, what was the last thing you were talking about?
Community education?
Or not, or about the, about hearing cases?
Yeah, it may be helpful. Oh, I know what it was, and that is, for instance, when police officers are accused of misbehavior and show up for examination, are they not often, not always, but often accompanied by lawyers provided by the union?
Almost universally.
So it's just kind of obvious. If they have lawyers, then you better have a lawyer. That's to me, that's the answer to that pushback, is that you have to be able to provide the same level of expertise as the police officer is being provided. That's all.
Dr. McIntosh?
I guess I just wanted Connor to speak to, because I think one of the concerns that keep being brought up is that, you know, if we don't get this budget, are we going to be able to hear cases anyway? So, because I think the goal is they want us to create this public forum to bring issues into the light that are has not historically been brought to the light with the Citizen Review Board. So I think that's one of the major things, that if we don't get this budget, you know, the concern behind that may be, and I don't know if this is the time for that, but the concern would be, are we going to hear cases? And I think the impetus behind that is really to create the public forum for people to, you know, to be more transparent in this whole process, I guess. But, you know, even thinking about that with under-resourced budget, you know, we're probably going to yield the same results. But I know that's one of the concerns. So I guess if you can speak to that.
I'll just say, you know, yes, I think we're seeing today where Chicago's Civilian Review Board is releasing body-worn camera footage of a shooting of a 13-year-old. You know, they do not have direct disciplinary power, but I promise you the release of that body-worn camera footage is going to lead to significant consequences in the city of Chicago for policing. And so, you know, if we just investigate cases and don't have discipline, we're going to have the ability to do that kind of transparency work on everything, right? And, you know, I'll just, you know, the city charter says that we have to have access to all police databases. And, you know, that includes body-worn camera footage databases, right? And that in itself is a monumental, I guess the reason why I really understand and want to hear more from the community about what a complaint process without discipline at the end would represent to them. I think looking at other communities, we know a little bit about what it can do, and that transparency in policing, not just for individual cases, but over the system, can create real change, because this is an area that there's never been transparency about. People have no idea what actually happened. The sustain rates for complaints that don't have body-worn camera footage are in the single digits. So sustain rate is when a civilian review board looks at a case and says, you know, we think that there's misconduct. Or excuse me, sustain rates are when the department agrees with the recommendation of discipline from the civilian review board. It goes up to like 60% when there's body-worn camera footage. So I might be misremembering those statistics, but my point is that transparency matters. And that is a service that we can provide. I will also say that moving towards an effective investigatory process can prove to courts that we know what we're doing and that we can have disciplinary power. And so, Dr. McIntosh, what I will say, though, is that this is something very important for the community to understand. The resources we need, like our process, doesn't change if we get disciplinary power. We have to do the same investigations. The only difference is at the end, instead of saying we recommend this discipline, we say we impose this discipline. So there's no change in necessary processes. The resources will change. The need for resources will, because we'll get way more complaints, right? But in terms of the process, it's the same. And so what I'll say is an underfunded PAB, even if it doesn't have disciplinary power, the investigations will take long. So I think no matter what funding we get, it's incumbent on us to say, look, you can file a complaint with us, but because of the funding we have, it will take a year or something, right? So if we took all the resources we had now and accepted complaints based on the best data available, I'm not saying it's 100%, but I'm saying based on the best data available, it would take us well over 2 years, or at least 2 years to investigate the average complaint. 2 years. I wouldn't bother filing a complaint with us. So there's some level of funding at which it's not worth accepting complaints because it would take too long. You wouldn't want to do that to the community, right? And I think 90 days is a pretty, if you think about it, and remember, 90 days is just to have the investigation complete. It's not to have the hearing. You still have to have the hearing after that. The investigation is just doing the paper review. That's 90 days. So people probably are already going to have to wait months and months just at the $5 million level, right? And so the question is, do we want people to wait more than months and months and let it go into the years? That's the real question about this budget. So I guess I hope I answered that question there, Dr. McIntosh.
Yeah, I think it gives the public a little bit more clarity on understanding that process.
Yep. And I guess one of the things I wanted to point out too that, kind of came up in the meeting yesterday was the idea of, investigations that lead to more policy procedures and practices changes, that we are really identifying some, culture shifts or culture changes that need to happen within the Rochester Police Department, which actually will facilitate change in the long run, which is what really ultimately we're after, what ultimately the community is after. So when I talk about pepper spraying a 9-year-old, we talk about pepper spraying or, subjecting a mother and her child to pepper spray. We, identify those policy procedures and practices, folks, and practices. Practice is part of culture, right? So we are identifying all three. And if we can make, clear, concise recommendations and then drive those through, with the community's help and with their buy-in, we can really see changes, right? We talk about, apples, good apples or bad apples, though they don't exist. What exists is culture. So we need to look at that. Rabbi Settle, I think you were next, and then Dr. Harrison.
Yeah, so I have a couple of things. So, right. So, I guess I want to push back on this idea that we don't need to do research in the sense too. It's like, yes, everyone knows that we shouldn't be pepper spraying 9-year-old girls, 9-year-old people, whatever, right? But what we do instead is not obvious, right? So in other words, that it's a longer discussion about how do we interact with minors at all, right? How do the police interact with minors? How do we approach situations in which a minor is involved? And it's also not like the answer to that isn't, oh, I think this is a good idea. The answer to that has to be based on actual evidence. And that has to be found and evaluated. And it's a process. It's not just off the top of our heads. Like you don't just make stuff up. And a frustration that I've had with some of the presentations we've had from the RFD, to tell you, the RPD, is I have not been able to find the evidence for the policies that they do us. And that's something that, you know, we really have a commitment to and need to do. And in the same vein, absolutely, disagreement is fine. If folks disagree, in particular elected officials want to disagree about our budget, but I want to know their evidence. In other words, if they say you don't need this to do that, then show me the evidence for what you think we need, right? Don't just make it up, you know? And this is so frustrating as I've entered into all this, I have to admit, seeing how much stuff people just make up, basically, and that we've really been conscientious. And again, with great thanks to Connor's legwork on a lot of this, we've been, you know, we have a real commitment to evidence-based work. And that this discussion, whatever discussion about our budget happens, has to involve talking about evidence, not just opinion.
Totally agree. Thank you, Rabbi Settle. Dr. Harrison?
I find myself agreeing with the rabbi too. But just to extend a little bit on what Shani was saying, just because I haven't heard it explicitly stated this way, if we investigate a complaint and find that a police officer has misbehaved and discipline that officer in some way, we affect one officer. If we investigate the behavior of the police force, pepper spraying a 9-year-old, whatever, when we do that investigation and we come to the conclusion that they need to change the order that governs that behavior, if they need to change the training that governs that behavior, we affect all 700 odd police officers. To say that our work with police procedures is less important is, I think, absolutely wrong and short-sighted.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. I agree with that. Board Member Perez.
Yeah, I just wanted to and thank you, Rabbi Settle, for reminding us of the evidence base, because I know that's something that you have been, you're constantly asking for that, and thank you for bringing that up. I don't know if this is the time or the place, but I feel like we've had more than enough, at least for me, situations where Connor has been disrespected, to some extent embarrassed, put down. I don't know, we come with a long list of words, but I feel like that's happened too much for me, from council, from the mayor. And I feel like if something we do need to maybe do in an executive session without Connor present is our comeback for that. Because it's happened way too many times, very publicly, in a very demeaning way that I don't appreciate. So if we do have an executive session, it's going to be how we're going to address that and not allow that to continue to happen. Because him being our executive director was a decision that we made, and we only made. Nobody influenced us to make it. We know that we made the right choice, and we have to stand up for him. And that's why I was so upset when I heard, because I'm not gonna deny I'm also a friend of the mayor, but I didn't appreciate what she said. And we're not going to do that. And if we are going to do it, it's so that we can have a comeback for when they try to do this again to Connor in public, because we need to stop it right there at that moment when it's happening and not allow it to go any further.
So I guess I'll add that I'd like to include myself in that, and Dr. McIntosh as well. I think that, folks, being you know, the most, I would say that this, that's the most discouraging part of this, knowing that, you know, we're not doing this for money and that this also happens in private. And, you know, that is like, I just don't like, we'll have to talk about that in executive session, but I thank you, Board Member Perez, for bringing that up. But, you know, we really will have to figure out what that looks like for us, because again, you know, we don't want to, as regular citizens of Rochester, which is what we all are, you know, I don't want to set a precedent for future board members as to what their treatment will be, future executive directors, what their treatment will be. Is this what we can expect, right? To Dr. Harrison's point, being like, this is government. I actually get that. And I thought about that actually, and I've, you know, many months of doing this, you know, I've, you know, walked around town and like, you know, sat in coffee shops and just thinking about like, if this is what this is like up here, do I really want to do this? And I don't really want anybody to have to be subjected to that, you know, because they should believe, you know, with with a grain of salt, right? Everybody, we're all human, we all are all imperfect, but I think that, you know, to the degree that we've experienced some things, is just really just downright traumatic at some points. And I don't want, you know, me as the chair to see any one of the board members subjected to that, or the executive director, because especially when he's the only one doing this full time. Especially when, you know, like myself have changed my job to make sure that I can serve in this role, and then being mocked for it. So, and I will say too, I understand, you know, city council's concern about the budget. I understand that we won't agree. We may not come to an agreement. You know, we may have to come to some compromises. We may have to have discussions, but, you know, discussions are discussions and they're not put downs. You know, they're not ways to say, you know, how we're being controlled and manipulated. I don't want to get back on that, but I just think that they're like, this is the time to start having these conversations, and knowing that, you know what, folks, we will have to prove, you know, we'll have to look at our budget, make sure it looks great. But, you know, citizens have a right to ask why. And so does city council, city government. They have a right to ask why. And so we'll have to provide them with that information until we feel like, look, we've given you all the information we can. There is some fundamental disagreements that we have. We'll try to see if we can work through those, to Dr. McIntosh's point. And if we cannot, then we'll have to go, we're going to go forward anyway. So I think Dr. Harrison and then Dr. McIntosh.
One part that I disagree with you about, Shani, it's a contact sport. And you can't take it personal, because that's just not the whole objective.
Can I just briefly interject?
Yeah.
I just want
to. Have you ever briefly done anything?
Oh, see, come on. People think I'm out here running the board. Come on. No, but here's the thing. I think it is important, Bob. You know, this contact sport is right. I think that we are about to hire 2 senior staff, and we have to provide them, I personally have to provide them with a healthy work environment that is not featuring harassment or demeaning behavior. I, as a boss, am not going to tolerate that for the people I work for. I'm not going to tolerate it for myself either. But, you know, this needs to be a healthy workplace environment. And I will say, I mean, we've seen some things in public. I think that the demeaning and rudeness to Shani and you know, Chair Wilson and Vice Chair McIntosh, that does need to stop. And I think part of the reason it's able to happen is because it's behind closed doors. And so I think the board might need to have a conversation about, you know, what things it allows the city to do in private and what, you know, we do in public. Because I think sunshine's the best disinfectant. And to Bob, to your point, I have stopped taking some of this personally, because I realize that this isn't about, you know, it's not about me. It's about having a way to criticize the board without being seen as publicly criticizing the board. Because I think people understand how widely supported the PAB is. And, you know, that's what I was saying on that front.
Thank you for that. I guess I would say, one thing in kind of changing this behavior is calling it what it is. Gaslighting, and that has to stop, because it does cause a lot of psychological trauma. And that should not be the case, because we are here committed trying to do this work. So definitely I echo that. We do need to address that on all fronts. And definitely, like I said before, let's separate the problem from the person from the problem. If it's definitely the budget, let's come together and figure it out. Because like I said, we're all in this for the same common goal. So we need to keep that at hand. So I guess those are some of the thoughts that I had. I realize, and if in that conversation, if we can understand as well, understand, I think there is some benefit in understanding everyone's interest. I understand that interest is probably for them to keep the budget to a certain level, for citizens of Rochester in multiple ways. And our interest is also we're also trying to improve the community through the work we're doing. So I think once we also, them clarifying that, so we can say, okay, fine, what's your interest? What's our interest? And this is, and just like I said, having more dialogue around the context of things, I think we can come to an agreement. But yes, the bullying, in a sense, gaslighting, these all create psychological trauma. And, so there's lots of cultures that need to be changed, not just RPD. I'm done speaking.
Culture and medicine too, Dr. McIntosh. The three of us, interestingly enough, are, medical professionals or former medical professionals, retired, like Dr. Harrison. But, I think, a culture of medicine was the same. We are, you're always meant to second guess yourself, always meant to triple second guess, right? And, to be in some of these spaces where, you are new and trying to figure things out, of course you want to listen to elders and people that know more than you, but I think there's just a point where you just have to have boundaries and say, you know what, enough is enough. And I really just had to do that. And again, I think as somebody that's as conscientious as we all are, would of course, always look to the leadership above us for direction, because that's how I was raised. That's how we were raised, right? But at a certain point, it's like, yep, we all understand the mission, and we understand that the mission is what it is, to Dr. Harrison's point. But there just is a certain point where it's like, look, a lot of this is just, there's just got to be a gate. There's got to be a way to just say, you know what, I'm just sorry, but this is just not acceptable behavior that I can participate in or be a part of, or allow my board members or the executive director to be a part of. And at least remember, folks, this board, this organization agency is supposed to last as long as Rochester exists. It will be here. It will be here. And so we have to keep everybody safe, not for ourselves, but for the rest of the longevity of this agency. And so that also, I think about myself, Dr. McIntosh, all of you, Chuck Connor, and I also think about those that will come after us. So that's also what I'm thinking of too. And also too, not for nothing, y'all, like, Black people doing this work, there is like, if I won't tolerate this behavior from people that look like me or people that are white, right? Black Lives Matter, I won't tolerate it from people that do. So, and I think that we should stand up for both, for Black leadership and, affirm those that are doing the work, especially that are doing as much work as we are.
Oops.
What's next?
I think Arlene had a hand up. I don't know.
Yes, I just wanted to emphasize a couple of things. One, yes, totally supportive. We have to stand and stick together and make our voices heard as to what we will and will not tolerate. The other thing is that sometimes people will do things to get you off in the weeds. Now, we're discussing this, and we're not discussing how we're going to get out and promote the budget and do what we have to do. Because for me, that's the next step. We know that the community is very supportive of us. That's where that's who we have to continue to educate. keep them involved. Yes, stand up for ourselves, but we also have to get out there and do the work that we say that we're doing and do what has to be done. People are always going to throw stones at us, pot shots, and all of that, a happy hoo-ha. It has nothing to do with who we are. We are an entity that's making a difference in Rochester. And whether others like it or not, go along with it or not, we are still going to be the examples of what an accountability board looks like for the nation. So when people throw up smoke screens and get us off in the weeds to discuss all of that, they're taking time away from what else we have to do. And for me, again, I said the next step is, how do we get this out here? How do we inform the public? What are we going to do so that we can keep this ball rolling and have the community behind us? That's one of the things that President has done, not this particular president has done. When they get a lot of pushback from Congress, they get a lot of pushback from the Senate or the representatives, they go out, take it to the public. When the public is behind them, then things have to change. And we need to keep the public informed, continue to be transparent, and keep things moving so that the public not only has our back, but our front.
Let's get to work.
Period.
Let's get to work. So I'm going to wrap up with a few things. We have to get 2 things done tonight, because remember, we have that Tuesday meeting with City Council.
Yep.
I think that, one of my primary tasks is making sure that we're all ready for that, ready to talk, ready to go. We got the information we need. One thing, like I said, we need to really firm up tonight, because I know they'll ask about it, is will you investigate complaints without disciplinary power? And I think one of the answers you can have is, if we have the resources to do it right. If we don't have those resources, we can't betray the community by offering them a process that doesn't work. So that's the question I think you need to answer probably now.
Yeah. So folks, how do we feel about that? Can anybody speak to any concerns that they have around that statement, if there are any? Yeah, go ahead, Reverend Nikolov.
I mean, what Connor just said, yes, and I think, we'll absolutely do that because it's the right thing to do. And it would be nice to know that when we make a recommendation of discipline, that we also have the backing of our city leadership to follow through on it. But regardless of whether they decide to act on that, we'll do our part in that. It'd be nice to know that they have the will, the resolve, and the support of this process by investing in it to do it right, to know that when we do that work, it will be completed by their executive action. So yes, and when we make that commitment, we hope that there will be a reciprocal commitment to also make action.
Board Member Brown?
I'm sorry, Miss Cecilia had her hand up first.
I
Oh,
apologize.
no, that's from before. I'm going to take.
Okay. Connor, would you repeat what you said? Because I heard you say, yes, we're going to do this as long as we have the funding. And I have an issue with as long as we get the funding that we need. Oh, no, we're going to do it. The public may not, it may take longer, but I think we need to let them know, even if they don't give us all this money, we're still going to investigate. We're still going to represent the community. No? Yes? Did I mishear?
I think that's a very important question for the board to answer.
So I think that's what we're trying to figure out, is that, if we don't get the money that we need, Board Member Brown, it will take us longer to investigate these cases.
Right.
So we're not even talking about disciplinary power right now. We're just talking about investigation. So giving people outcomes, which are, yes, you made a complaint. Here's the results of this investigation. That will take longer without funding. So I think the first thing we should be asking for is funding, period. Yep, we may not get funding, but I'm saying that I think our first, I guess my, thing would be, we should absolutely ask for funding and say, we really can't do it without it, because we've already had outcomes we've already had a city that has not been really seen or heard in this space, and you really need to do something different. So I guess that's what I would say. I think Dr. McIntosh and then Rabbi Settle.
She can go. I'll go after her.
So my concern in this is we have an enormous trust placed in us by the community. This is a really significant endeavor in terms of the hurt and the harm that needs to be repaired in this process. And I guess we need to be really honest with people about expectations, right? So the problem is if we don't have adequate funding, I think we have to be able to have a conversation about what we are and are not capable of, depending on the resources we have to do it. And that saying that we'll investigate is not the solution in terms of, it doesn't help if we investigate and can't get any, can't draw any conclusion for 3 years or something, right? People don't want to process. I don't think that's when members of the community hear investigation, I don't think they're hearing delays and a long process and obstacles in that way, right? I think I think the desire, which is I would hope all of our desire, is something that feels much more satisfactory than that. So the issue is, I guess, is that if we're denied the money, the people who deny us the money are the ones who have to take responsibility for that disappointment. That the way this has to be phrased, right, is not that we won't do it or we don't want to do it, but what the community deserves and what the community expects cannot be done with those resources. And that's the issue to me, right? That it's not our decision in that sense. It's the decision of the people who vote on the funding, whether that's going to be possible, and they have to take responsibility for that.
So I just wanted to say something before Dr. Harrison. I think Dr. Harrison, Dr. McIntosh, and then Board Member Brown say that. So Rabbi Settle, thank you so much for that. I actually wrote that down. We will, who is going to take responsibility for, that will fall to us for we have to take responsibility for the community's disappointment and distrust, right? That we are trying to untangle ourselves from out of that, but if these things are not done, who is going to take responsibility for that? Is city government? Is that us? Like, who's going to do that? So I just really like that statement. Dr. Harrison.
This is an idea that I don't like, but I just thought I'd mention it just to irritate Rabbi Settle. What if we said that we will consider all complaints and render a verdict at the end of 90 days, with the caveat of the degree of certainty of the verdict. So if we have the ability to do the appropriate investigation, if we have the resources to do the appropriate study, then we should be able to come to a conclusion at the end of that 90-day period that has, say, a greater than 90% chance of being right. On the other hand, if we just have a couple of pennies to work with, at the end of the 90 days, we can still offer a conclusion, but it'll only be maybe have a 10% chance of being right.
Interesting.
May I ask about, I'm confused. Is it okay? Could I ask some clarifying questions? Do you mind? Do you mean that we would investigate in 90 days, or that we, without investigation, we would draw conclusions?
I'm saying that whatever we do would be completed in 90 days. Whatever we do. So if we have one investigator and that one investigator already has 24 cases on their file and don't have the time to even read the manuscript before coming before us. So they come before us, they read the manuscript while they're sitting there, and they say, well, the best guess I can give is that the guy didn't do any harm.
And how is justice created doing that?
I didn't say it was justice. I just said it was a procedure. Really, I'm it's just occurred to me that that's one way of organizing it.
Bob, that's a very confusing thought that you put out there. And it's about as useful as a bucket under a bull. We can't operate like that. You don't get any, you get no milk from the bull, and we're not going to get positive results from that particular train of thought. Perhaps if you could rework it so that it's can be seen or understood as something viable, I really, really would appreciate it. But that wasn't what I was going to say, but Celia is ahead of me.
Go ahead. Dr. McIntosh, we can't hear you.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go after Arlene.
Please.
Okay. What I wanted to say was, one of the things that Bob brought out was, even though we're doing the investigation, we're dealing with one individual, one complaint, whatever, we can still affect a change by keeping the entire system in front of the public. We have to let the community know what's being done, what's right, what needs to change. No matter what these individual investigations are, they will always provide a platform for us to talk about change, to present change, to show why we need change, and to applaud when change has come and show the community that makes a difference. So even though we're talking about individual investigations, we also want to look at the big picture. Change the culture of the police community. That's the big picture. And in the meantime, for the other things that we're trying to do, we still want to keep our efforts to change the culture and the police community. All right, Sister McIntosh, I'm done.
That was worth the cost of admission. So thank you. Okay, so a couple of things I'm thinking about. So imagine for a minute if this said budget was denied. And we say, fine, we're going to, try to get aimed for a 90-day thing. But I guess my problem is, we haven't had much luck with getting the RPD records. So even if we say, okay, yeah, we're going to go forward and do this process, when are we going to get records? We're already into April.
2.5 months.
So I'm just wondering about, when we're talking about the process, we could have all the intention to get these things done in 90 days, but that's in a perfect world of just saying, okay, are we even going to get the information we need from RPD to start looking in to do the work that we're doing,
right?
With or without an MOU. So that's just another wrench in the whole equation, I guess, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I just want to say that's important. That's why we have our lawyers working on a more comprehensive MOU. I think, again, thanks to Linda Kingsley for giving us a good foundation. I think that after looking at MOUs with other departments and things, I think we're working on something more comprehensive. It's going to take a little bit of time to get that in place. But of course, if the RPD refuses to cooperate, it doesn't matter how many resources we have, right? Part of the reason, though, we have the power to take them to court. So, but I just want to refocus the conversation for a second, because I know it's getting a little late. And the real important question is this: we don't have to find a red line tonight about, at what point we won't accept complaints. Clearly, with the current amount of resources we have, we can't. We don't have it. We don't have the infrastructure process. We literally can't do it. The important thing is that you will be asked, if just point blank, if you don't have disciplinary power, would you accept complaints? And I just, there just needs to be a clear answer to that. We don't have to talk about resources, just in general. Is there a world in which?
Yes.
Okay, is there anyone who disagrees with that?
With the caveat that we have to have the resources to do it.
Right. Without saying exactly what those resources might be, what the red line would be,
And my point is that if we don't have the resources, we'll make stuff up.
Right. I think that sounds like a joke, but I want people to be very clear. If you do it without the resources, it's guesses. And the community deserves way more than guesses. So I think, go ahead.
I want to, part of our commitment, I said this before, but I feel really strongly, we have some really foundational commitments. One is transparency, but another is not making stuff up. Because that's what's led us into all of this.
Exactly.
Right. And again, folks, we were created to be the opposite of that. To kind of piggyback off of that. And I, we really take seriously the reinforcement of distrust that's in this community already. And we're not trying to do that here. So I don't know if we have to take a vote on this. I do. I don't think, because we made a decision formally, correct? Okay.
No, I think the board has a consensus. I think I see it. So I think the second point is not about the budget stuff, but about our rules, which is very important for us to vote and approve before going into next week, the operating rules. Now, like everyone, we talked about it in detail, last meeting. We circulated the rules, revised rules last week. So I think folks have had a chance to vote on them. I can pull them up on the screen if people want me to, but I think we just need to vote on that tonight. And then I can talk about the next steps for budget and education, because I know a lot of people want to talk about what's next on that. So Chair Wilson, I don't know if you want to.
Actually, I do. And I know it's getting late, so folks, but this is pretty important to me. I actually would like to go into executive session to discuss some of the issues that we brought up tonight around some of the things that we've been facing in closed meetings. I think it's important. I know that it's late, but I would like to put that motion out there. If it's agreed that we can talk about it at a later date, that's fine. But I think that it's more urgent than I think that I'm comfortable. That I'm not really comfortable waiting, and so that's just something I wanted to also put out there.
I would just say that I would need a little time to make sure that we have the right exception to go into executive session to do it. I want to make sure that we do it legally.
Sure.
So it might be easier to table it for next time.
Okay.
I'd say that we ramble along, not quite knowing what we're doing half the time. So I support your motion for executive session.
Could I ask that we vote on the rules first? Could we do that?
Right. So again, we're talking about the end of the meeting and what the rest of tonight.
So when the time comes,
that's why I had that request out there.
I would like to make a motion to pass the rules.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor to pass the operating rules as written. Everybody's had a chance to look at them. So if all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dr. Harrison, is there a reason that you did not raise your hand?
I think that's a little rushed.
Okay, did you have some concerns that you wanted to address?
Not especially.
Okay, all right, so it's approved.
I just, you should count the no's and the abstentions.
Okay,
Yeah.
so one no, so we have,
Make me an abstention.
no, you have an abstention, so, and we have, so 3 abstentions, we have, board member, yes, because we have,
Absentees are not abstentions.
Yeah, absentees don't count as abstentions.
all right, thanks for clarifying. So 2 absentees and then 1 abstention. All right,
Okay, so the operating rules pass. They amend and replace the bylaws, and those will be uploaded and made available publicly tomorrow, so folks can read them and check them out. Next, I just want to discuss the next steps for the budget thing. I think a very important strategy is first hiring our engagement and education staffer, and the plan is to make an offer tomorrow on that position, and hopefully we'll be able to get that person on board within the next week or so to help us out with a lot of this work. In the short term, holding educational sessions so that folks who, for example, people in the Police Accountability Board Alliance who want to go and educate their communities, their organizations about what we're doing, I think that's probably the important first step. So I'm setting those up with the Alliance. I think inviting people to Tuesday's City Council meeting to watch, where we're going to be talking a lot about the budget, that's very important. I think that having a strategy that involves meeting with community leaders and discussing directly with the organizations that are important in Rochester, what the budget actually is for, why it's for the community, and why it's important to support it. And then kind of having more creative things too. I think some folks have talked about going to the public market, having staffers or board members there, these kind of things. But I think the absolute first critical step is for the board to come up with, as a group, organizations that we think need to be reached out to, or individuals that need to be reached out to. We can do that over email, but coming up with the list of folks who we need to speak to about the budget to educate and to illuminate, because I think, as we said, it's the community standing up that's going to get this done. So I think that's the immediate next step for the board. Any questions or comments on these immediate next steps on this?
Rabbi Settle, did you have a comment? No, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
No, so I had a question, but then I forgot it, so
Okay.
never mind.
Getting late.
Dr. McIntosh, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question?
Rabbi, you
I
remember?
remembered my question. So are we making a presentation about the budget to the council on Tuesday?
Yeah, I mean, it's a quarterly meeting and they're going to be asking all about the budget. And so having a presentation ready is the best thing.
Okay. So should we be in touch with you about whether we'd like to be part of that, or?
Yes, I'll be sending an email out, and we'll be making the presentation, and I think the same process that we had at the last city council meeting, I think we should follow the same thing. So that's priority number 1 for me. And of course, everyone doesn't have to be there because it's odd time, but whoever can make it, that would be great. Okay, if no questions about the engagement strategy, I think the next important thing to remind people of is the financial disclosure forms for 2020. Now, the form says 2021 on it, but it is for 2020, okay? So it is for your information for the first year that you actually served on the board. Okay, so that's what they're actually asking about now, is your financial interests for the year that you were actually doing your work. The due date is, they asked to have things in today. I've been asked by the Office of, I think, Public Integrity, I don't remember, to just really encourage folks to get those forms in as soon as possible. If you have additional questions about filling them out, please let me know. That is one easy thing to avoid people criticizing folks on, is just, getting those forms in.
Could we get confirmation, for those of us who did send it in, is there a way of getting just a confirmation that it was received?
Yes, I can ask for whose things have currently been received by the office.
I'm sending mine tomorrow.
Great.
And I'll remind some folks, if Yeah, Connor, if you can just let us know, just to make sure that we get everybody's in before the weekend.
No, Debbie Cole's great on that, so I'm sure.
Okay, great.
You do realize that you're dealing with an oxymoron, public integrity.
You know what? Do you have a book on a coffee table that you've written with all of your weird little foibles? Just like
That's going to be his birthday present.
it is. I'm just gonna find a Garfield book and just like give it to you.
And Connor, that form will not, they will not
Bob.
receive, they will not receive that form with a electronical signature.
I think, Rabbi, I think they will.
No, I don't know. I printed it out and mailed it in, but
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I e-signed
I would like-
last year, but I can double check.
okay.
If there's an e-sign one, I'd like that option too.
I think mine is. I have a thing on my.
I'll ask Debbie tomorrow.
May I ask Chair Wilson if clearly there is a personnel matter that needs to be discussed in executive session from what you've said. Can you give us a sense of timing in terms of, would you like us to spend 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, something like that, if there's something urgent?
I think for as far as executive session goes, I think that I would like it to be around, concerns about, personnel, which is Connor having issues in, go ahead. I know I see you saying something, go for
I
it.
will say that the exception for you have to have, upon a majority vote of the total membership taken into an open meeting, you can go into executive session for the following reason. The matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, suspension, discipline, dismissal, or removal of a particular person,
Okay.
or the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person. So, I'm not the board's lawyer,
Yeah.
but what I will say is just, it would have to be something that could lead to, my discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal.
So I don't know. It doesn't sound like at this point we have a reason to go into executive session.
No, not at all. It
So
sounds-
we'll probably have to discuss via email.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
Or one-on-ones?
Yeah.
Well, and it's something that you can always discuss at a retreat. How do you have values operate interpersonally as a board? That's.
I don't know. I mean, I disagree. I can make an argument that this could be considered to lead to some disciplinary concerns down the road.
Yeah, I think we err on the side of being.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet. Let's just, yeah, let's not.
Whatever.
So with that, I think that's everything we had on the list.
Yeah.
We're 8:30. So what do we think?
Okay. Nope. So I'm all set. I know we have our marching orders going forward. We have, so people, please be checking your email because there's going to be, please look at all of your contacts. Give us an email. Let's start an email chain about who we should be approaching for discussions around the budget within our own networks. And let's also be thinking about, how to best make sure that education is comprehensive and so the public gets the maximum amount of understanding from what we're giving them. And so if there's anything else, I'm going to have a motion, asking for a motion to end the meeting, please.
I make a motion. 10 motions.
Oh, that, eh? Okay. All right. Second?
All in favor?
Yeah, no second? Get out of here.
I'm gonna make you a t-shirt.
That's a majority.
Hey,
Thank
you know what?
all
Some days I get
joining
so
us.
good at it. Yes, the meeting's all in favor. Yes.
I'll,
Meeting's over.
I'll